guys, what's going on? Druzy here, back again on South Park Phone Destroyer, and today guys is a special episode. But before we get to what I want to talk about here today, I want to say two things very quickly for you guys. Number one is all of the information and all of what I'm going to talk about in this episode is pure and utter speculation. None of this has been confirmed by Ubisoft or Red Links at all. This is just me and my opinion and my thoughts on what could possibly, hopefully, be something that is added to this game in the hopefully as near future as humanly possible. I don't see it happening probably here within the first few months of this game, maybe within the first year of this game. And secondly, some of the things that I'm going to mention will probably change within, the next few months or possibly beyond that. So, please keep an open mind here as I'm posting this video, as in a lot of these things may change in the future. So again, let's get to it. So what I believe that, and what is theorized by many, many people, and a lot of people have been asking for and hoping for, as myself included in that, is that the next theme that we get in the game will be either a superheroes theme or a heroes theme. Let's just call it the heroes theme, because since every theme has been one word, instead of superheroes, let's say the heroes theme. So in the heroes theme, what I'm going to go through is I'm going to go through all of the current main characters that have multiple cards throughout multiple pieces of, of the themes currently. Some of these cards, as I'm making this video, do not have characters in all four of the themes, but most of them do. So I will, obviously go through those characters, and then I will go over not only the hero characters that we know for sure were developed, at least with whether through the show or through the video game The Fractured But Whole. So I'm going to go through each of the characters. I'm going to specify what their character is, what type they're going to be, what their rarity is, and compare it to, and base the rarity based on other cards, and possibly go on if they're going to have maybe a charged ability or a war cry ability. I will theorize what, abilities or things that they may have based on what I think. So again, all of this is speculation. None of this has been verified, but I do want to hear your guys' opinion if you agree or disagree with me. Some of the comments may be long, but this is just something I've been wanting to do. I've been doing this little mini series on card leaks and things like that, or card suggestions. This is all, again, suggestion and speculation, pretty much solely by myself. None of it has been suggested by other people, to my knowledge. But if they have, please let me know. So we're going to, of course, start off with the number one person that most people would assume. That's Cartman. So Cartman, he would obviously be the Coon. Based on Cartman's current rarities, so Cartman's current cards, he has 2 rares, an epic, and a legendary in his current 4 theme system. So my assumption is he would be either a common card or a rare card for the Coon. Now, I could also see an epic possibly for him. I don't really see the Coon being a legendary. I mean, a lot of people have been thinking that there'd be, so far as I know, there are about 4 to 5 legendaries per theme currently, as far as in the early few months of the game. So I don't see them going all out in this heroes theme and giving half of them legendary rank. Even though a lot of people have speculated a lot of legendary ranks, there are some that I think for sure need to be legendary ranks, and I will, pretty much discuss which ones I think of that fit that category. But I don't see the Coon as being that. I could see him probably being an epic, because he is obviously a very important character throughout the course of, both all the Coon episodes in South Park and in The Fractured But Whole. So I could see him as an epic card. He would obviously be a tank, because all of Eric's cards are tanks, and he would have some kind of charged ability. I would assume it would have something to do with his claw attack, similar to Sheriff Cartman, who shoots his little guns in a thing. Maybe he does something similar where he does swipe attacks or something with his claws. So that is what I would speculate if there was a Coon card in the Heroes theme. The next main one would be Stan. Stan would, of course, be Toolshed. And as Toolshed, so far Stan has 1 legendary, 1 epic, and 2 common cards in the current 4 theme format for him. I would assume he would either be a rare or a common. Since he mostly has commons, he doesn't have a rare version of himself. Maybe Toolshed would be a rare. Also, he would be a fighter, because Stan is a fighter card. Now, Stan has all charged abilities so far within the game, so I'd assume it'd be some kind of charged attack. I have absolutely no idea what it would do, though, as Toolshed. You know, that would be very interesting to see what he would do. I would assume it'd be some kind of buff, maybe a team buff of some kind. But again, I really don't know. This is, again, completely, speculatory. So I would assume it'd be some kind of charge buff of some kind. If you guys have any suggestions as what, Toolshed's buff would be, what any of these characters' buffs and or abilities would be, let me know down below. But I would assume, in my opinion, it would probably be some kind of team buff. For Kyle, he would have the Human Kite, of course. So the Human Kite is his character in the hero's lore. He has 1 legendary, 2 commons, and his he doesn't have a sci-fi card when I'm, posting this video. He will, of course, have a sci-fi card most likely in the near future. So as of right now, we don't know what that rarity would be. So he only has the 3 cards currently right now within the current game. I would assume it'd be either a rare or a common yet again with Human Kite. I don't see Human Kite being anything special. I would assume he would have to be a ranged card like all of Kyle's cards have been. I would assume in this version, though, he would be flying versus on the ground. All of his other Kyle versions, of course, are on the ground. So my assumption is he would either fly or he would have a charged ability that would cause him to go up into the air and maybe throw a projectile of some kind across, the battlefield at maybe the farthest distanced enemy and or leader, like maybe to be able to take out, like, if you have a range card back in the back near the new kid, maybe it would do something like that, to have some kind of ability where either he would fly up into the sky as part of his charge attack and throw something, or he would already be flying anyways. So that would be my speculation for Kyle as Human Kite. Next we have Kenny. Of course, Kenny would be Mysterion, and as Mysterion, I would assume he'd be an epic card or a legendary card, one of those two things. Now, of course, Kenny already has a legendary card as Inuit Kenny in the Adventure series. He also has 2 epics and a common. But I would assume that Mysterion, because as he says in the show, Mysterion can't die. So I would assume that there would be something where maybe Mysterion has an ability. Maybe it's a death wish, because all of Kenny's abilities are death wishes. Maybe his death wish would be he comes back to life with maybe half health or something like that. He would, of course, have to be an assassin because all of Kenny's current cards are assassins, so I would assume he would stay with an assassin-based thing. But maybe he would come back to life and get maybe half his health back or something like that. Maybe that would be too overpowered or something like that, but the fact that they say he can't die, maybe be something along those lines, like something similar to what Pope Timmy does, but obviously different because it would only affect him and not the last enemy that died. But that would be my theory as far as for Kenny and Mysterion, that he would maybe have some kind of ability where he'd come back to life, possibly something like that. For Butters, of course, Professor Chaos, and of course, I've showcased Professor Chaos. Butters is probably my favorite character in the entire show, and Professor Chaos is probably my favorite of anything that Butters does within the show. So, of course, Mr. Professor Chaos would have to be a character within the game. I would assume he'd have to be a legendary, almost, I would assume for sure, just because in a lot of the times when Professor Chaos shows up, he's either a big, giant, and if you look at the Good Times with Weapons episode, he becomes this big, giant, huge, superhero. I could definitely see something where Professor Chaos usually is a larger-than-life thing. Even in in the Stick of Truth, you saw that Butters had the ability to cast and become Professor Chaos, where he became this big, giant, huge thing. Now, Butters, of course, has all assassins currently within the game. I think that Professor Chaos would have to be a fighter. And again, this is complete speculation, but because if he's going to be in giant size, which is my assumption, then I would assume he'd have to be probably a fighter. Or maybe Butters would have the ability in his charged ability, or, Butters, of course, generally has a death wish. Maybe in his, instead of a death wish, he has a war cry where he becomes his large, giant self for maybe a few minutes, or a few seconds, maybe say 10, 15 seconds or something like that, where he's this huge self, and he's basically the size of Man Bear Pig within the game, and does different things and does different damage, and then after a certain amount of time then turns back into normal normal sized Butters. I mean, that's just the theory again of what I would do. I mean, Butters currently has 3 commons and an epic right now, so he doesn't have a legendary card. So my assumption is that every character, when they have a card, will probably have at least 1 legendary. So why not have it be Butters, Professor Chaos, to be the legendary for him? That's again just a theory, so we'll see kind of what ends up happening. So with Timmy will be the next one I talk about. Timmy's a little bit different because Timmy technically has 2 different cards or 2 different characters within the hero's lore. So at the beginning he is Iron Maiden, so he's Iron Maiden at least in the episodes and stuff like that. But in the Fractured But Whole, he becomes Dr. Timothy, who is a villain that you fight within the game. So which one of those versions would he be within this game? I would assume it'd be Iron Maiden because that's the one that he's most viewed, the most. So that would be my assumption, is that if he was Iron Maiden, he would probably be either a common or a rare card, because currently Timmy has 2 rares, 1 epic, and 1 legendary. So I would assume he would either stick with since he doesn't have a common card, maybe it would fall to a common since he doesn't have one. But I would assume maybe a rare. He would obviously have to be ranged of some kind because all of his abilities have a range, and most of them have some kind of area of effect attack. But I don't really know what his attack would be or what his special ability would be, whether or not he was Iron Maiden or Dr. Timothy. So it's very hard to tell. I mean, with Dr. Timothy, he can't really have necessarily the mind control capabilities of what Dr. Timothy would probably have, because that's what Mecha Timmy does. So it's very tricky to try to guess what his ability would essentially be. So again, this is where you guys can come in for suggestions, because honestly, I don't really know what I would think he would have. I would assume it'd be some kind of charged ability, but again, it would be ranged, but I don't know exactly what it would be. For Jimmy, of course, Jimmy would be Fast Pass because that's what he is in the Fractured But Whole, and as Fast Pass, I would assume he'd be a common card. Jimmy has 2 commons, a rare, and an epic currently. And I think he would have a charged ability. He would be a fighter because all of his cards are currently fighters, but he'd have some kind of thing similar to what Space Warrior Token does, where he charges forward, or the fantasy version of Clyde, where Dwarf King Clyde, where he charges. I would assume Fast Pass would have some kind of ability where he would charge forward and do something in particular. But I would assume maybe, or he'd basically flash to the nearest enemy, do an attack, and then dash immediately back to his starting point. Maybe something like that, to where it would do a certain amount of damage, but then he would return back to the original point where he started from. That's just kind of a suggestion as far as what I would assume that his ability would be. I mean, come on, I'm wearing a Flash shirt, so it might as well be my Fast Pass shirt, exclusively for Jimmy. For Wendy, she would be Call Girl. Now, Call Girl, if my memory serves me right, only really shows up in the Fractured But Whole. She's not in any of the episodes as Call Girl. She would probably be a common card, just because, I mean, nobody really knows about her. Wendy currently has 1 common, 2 rares, and 1 epic right now within the game. She would be a range card because all of Wendy's cards have range. I don't know what she would do. I would assume she'd have maybe some kind of disruption, since she, Call Girl is about, that she can text and tweet and post on social media the fastest. So because the game is called Phone Destroyer, maybe there would be something where either, they lose their charged abilities for a brief period of time, or maybe the leader loses the ability to cast energy for a few seconds or something like that. I don't really know exactly what Call Girl would do. I would assume it would be something that would disrupt the phone. So it'd probably make the most sense that it would have some kind of leader, basically nerf for a temporary period of time. That would just make the most sense, I guess, based on her character. Now, for Randy currently has all cards within all 4 of the current themes. Now, Randy is the hardest one because Randy doesn't have a superhero within the lore so far, and there are only 2 main characters that have multiple cards within the themes that don't, and that's Randy and Ike. So for Randy, I have absolutely no idea what he would be. It would probably be either some fictitious character of some kind, because to be honest, I thought the Amazingly Randy, who became a fantasy card, would be the closest thing to a superhero for Randy. So do you just make something up completely? I mean, something that I thought would be really funny would be, Randy with his giant balls hopping around. But of course, Randy, all of his units are summoning units, so they summon something. So, I mean, if he was hopping around on his giant balls, which is one of the best episodes, by the way, then, what would, medicinal fried chicken, I believe, is the episode. What would he summon then? I mean, I don't really know. If you guys could think of what a Randy superhero card would be, that would be one that I would definitely need, possibly need feedback or suggestions for, because I have no idea what Randy would end up being. I mean, he'd be a fighter, because all of his cards, well, he's either a fighter or ranged. I apologize. Those are his two types. So I would assume a fighter of some kind, but then he summons, so what would he summon? I have absolutely no idea. For Tweak, Tweak would be, of course, Wonder Tweak. Now, you have Wonder Tweak and Super Craig, so I'm going to talk about both of them at the same time because, of Tweak and Craig and the whole lore of Tweak and Craig within the show. For Wonder Tweak, I would assume he'd be a common card. Tweak currently only has 3 cards within the game as I'm posting this, 2 commons and a rare. He will have Imp Tweak, which will be in the mystical theme. That hasn't released yet as I'm talking about this, but of course it is a boss that you fight, so it will inevitably come out within the game. He would obviously be a ranged ability of some kind, or maybe Tweak and Craig would be some kind of combo card similar to what Terrence and Phillip will eventually be within the game, because that has been a card that has been leaked but has not been released yet. That would just be, I don't know if maybe one would do ranged and one wouldn't. But for Craig, he would of course be Super Craig. He is probably be a rare card. He only has 2 current cards right now within the game as I'm talking about this. He doesn't have an adventure or a mystical card, but both of those will eventually come out, and they have been hinted at. The mystical card, of course, would be Pastor Craig, who is actually a boss again, similar to Imp Tweak. So eventually, most likely, Craig will have a card to go along with Tweak. I don't know if there'll be a combo card or not, or there'll be separate cards. I would assume they'd probably be separate cards, but I don't really know what either of them would do. I would assume maybe Craig, as Super Craig, would, most likely Craig would be a fighter. Tweak would obviously have some kind of range ability. I don't know what either of them would have, so again, that would be up for suggestion from you guys of what you think that would be. For Token would be Tupperware, and Token currently has 4 cards, 1 common, 1 rare, 1 epic, and 1 legendary. So he has 1 of each of the 4 current things within the game. I would assume he'd be either a rare or an epic card with a Tupperware, and I have absolutely no idea what Token would do. He'd be a fighter, of course. Now, would he be the bigger version of Tupperware, like, the big shield, big shielded version, or would he be just a normal Tupperware version? And then it's a matter of what would he end up doing beyond that point. I would assume maybe as Tupperware, because he has kind of, shielded kind of armor, maybe he would increase the armor of his teammates around him, whether a war cry ability like Rogue Token has, or maybe it would be a charged ability where he would give temporary, maybe defensive boost to all of your units on the field for a temporary period of time. That would just be a guesstimation of something that may or may not happen with Token if he became a hero card. Now for Dougie, which has been surprising that Dougie has a card in all of the themes so far, but he would of course be General Disarray, which would go alongside with, of course, Professor Chaos. He would be probably a rare card because all of Dougie's cards are rares. So my guess would be he'd be the 5th rare. I don't see him being a legendary card for him, so probably a rare or maybe an epic. And he would be an assassin. All of his cards have headhunter abilities. I don't know necessarily what he would do, but with the name Disarray, I would assume he'd do some kind of disruption of some kind. I think it would be cool if he would be able to cause maybe the leader to attack his own units. Something like that, maybe. And like when he hits that first hit, maybe the leader then, attacks, so many of the, charged electric shocks to maybe their own card that they just cast, or something like that. Again, pure speculation. I have absolutely no idea what he would do, but maybe something like that. I mean, his name is Disarray, so maybe something like that. Again, for Ike is a complete mystery. I have absolutely no idea what Ike would do because Ike doesn't have a superhero card currently within the game. He doesn't have a mystical card currently, but there has been one that's been leaked that will eventually come out. He has 1 common, 1 rare, and 1 epic. Currently, he has all assassins as of right now as well. So again, this is kind of one of those, you guys can kind of suggest what you think Ike would have, but I have, again, no idea what Ike would be as a superhero. In fact, I don't really have really many suggestions either. I mean, because I thought Canadian Ike would be what I would have originally suggested, but of course that became a fantasy card, so who knows. And last but not least, for at least the main characters within the game, Clyde would be Mosquito, because he is Mosquito within the game, within the episodes, and within the Fractured But Whole. Currently, Clyde has 1 common, 2 rares, and an epic card. All of Clyde's current cards are fighters, and all of them have Warcry abilities. I don't necessarily know what Mosquito would do. Maybe, I mean, because he has ketchup packets and blood and stuff like that. You know, I have no idea. I have no idea what essentially his Warcry ability would do. But I would assume he would either, most likely, either possibly be airborne of some degree, or maybe similar to what I suggested with Human Kite, to where he would go airborne for a temporary period of time to do whatever his ability is going to be. So Clyde's kind of tricky. I don't really know exactly what he would do as Mosquito, but of course he'd be Mosquito. He would be a fighter, most likely, and then we'll kind of see where it goes from there. So then, of course, now that I've gone through all the main characters, there are going to be some alternative characters within the either the episodes or the Fractured But Whole that I want to go through that would have to be added to the heroes theme. I'm trying to keep this episode as short as possible, guys. I do apologize if it goes very long, because this is a lot of different information, and I did my research on this, guys, to give you the best episode that I could here. So Captain Hindsight, of course, would have to be added to the game if there were a hero theme. Captain Hindsight would probably be an epic or rare. I would assume be a flying card, because he flies a lot around. I would assume he'd be ranged of some kind. And I have no idea what he would do as an ability. I mean, because he basically has no powers. He just gives out common sense information. So that would be tricky. I don't really know what he would do. Make a suggestion of what you think Captain Hindsight would do. I would assume it would be a war cry of some kind, and then some kind of mind control manipulation of some kind, maybe, or maybe he has some kind of hyperdrive thing where he causes the units to fly forward faster, similar to what Warboy Tweak does. I have no idea, to be honest with you. Cthulhu. So Cthulhu would of course have to be in the game. Cthulhu would be, I would think, would be a legendary tank, similar to Man Bear Pig, and probably as rare or have similar kind of attack and damage and stuff like that that Man Bear Pig has. I think they would basically be another counter for Man Bear Pig. Essentially would just be, place Cthulhu down. He'd probably have to be fairly expensive, but I could see him basically just being almost the same version of Man Bear Pig, maybe have a little bit different. I don't think he'd have necessarily a charged or a Warcry ability or anything like that. I think he would just be a straight up just bulky tank that does a ton of damage. Obviously, you don't want to make a complete hybrid of Man Bear Pig, make him different to some degree, but I feel like they'd have to be similar in basically the way the character would act. Of course, probably my favorite from the episodes, Mint Berry Crunch. Mint Berry Crunch would absolutely have to be a card within the heroes theme, and he would, of course, have to be a legendary, because it turns out he's the only one with actual superpowers in the actual show. Spoiler alert if you haven't seen the episodes of the Coon and Friends trilogy. It would be, of course, Mint Berry Crunch would have to be a legendary card. I would assume he'd be a fighter, flying, or something to some degree. Maybe, similar to kind of how Starvin' Marvin is, but obviously much stronger. And who knows what he would do? I mean, he could do basically anything. I mean, as Mint Berry Crunch, that would be really unique as far as what his ability would be. It would be a charged ability, would be my assumption, and then would just be, what would he end up doing? Maybe where he drops like little mint berries all on the battlefield that does, damage over time, or like a poisonish effect or something like that. I could see something like that maybe being what he ends up doing. If so, that would be really, really awesome. And last but not least of characters that I would suggest would be Captain Diabetes, which of course is Scott Malkinson. And Captain Diabetes would be probably a rare card. I would assume he'd be an assassin of some kind. And I don't have any idea what he would do. Maybe he would infect somebody with something for some temporary period of time when he attacks, and then it's gone. Or maybe be a headhunter style card, similar to what Dougie does. That's kind of up for debate as far as what Captain Diabetes would do, but I feel like Scott Malkinson's Captain Diabetes would have to be in the game, you know, if there was a heroes theme. So again, guys, this was, you know, hopefully not too long of an episode, but it may be a long episode. This is all, again, completely theorized stuff based on, you know, things that we know about all the characters that are currently in the game and about all the lore between all of the different superhero things throughout the course of South Park's history. So, you know, again, let me know what you guys think about all of the, you know, different things that I discussed here today, about all the different characters. I know it was a lot of information, but hopefully you guys watched all of this video and or, you know, watch it in segments and then, you know, kind of let me know what you think. I do want to hear your opinions on this, guys. This is all speculation. None of this is verified at all. So please don't think that I'm, you know, giving away information or trying to leak stuff out, because I'm not. This is completely my opinion based on my fandom of South Park and whatnot. But again, thank you guys for watching this, and thank you for the continued feedback, for the continued support from me on the channel. You guys have been absolutely amazing. But until next time, guys, my name is Druzy,